This is a video presenting the paper Scientific Legacy Code Enhancement and Testing Strategies for an example at the 11th Annual Conference on Computational Science and Computational Intelligence, December 2024, Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. In this slide, you can see the paper authors and the authors' affiliations. As the slide shows, there is a huge need of updating and changing Fortran legacy code, and most of the currently in production scientific code is actually legacy. So the fact that it has been written with poor software development practices and there is no documentation makes it hard to use, hard to maintain, and hard to parallelize, for example. So we are working on the process of making changes and updates to the legacy scientific Fortran code. We will show two examples of improvements that demonstrate how legacy source code can and should be improved. This example shows a very frequent code you can find in legacy Fortran source code, which is fixed source format and does not include indentation. And the standard way of changing this code is just include source code indentation, so it makes it easier to understand each control structure, what the code do. This kind of syntax transformation or syntax changes are known as pretty printing, but they actually help on readability of the source code. This code example is complex to understand because it includes a kind of simulation of a do-while iteration. So the way of changing or enhancing this code is just replace the while simulation by an actual do-while, which is available in Fortran, of course. This is our proposal for applying changes to legacy code, which is a series of phases or tasks very similar to that known as continuous integration and continuous delivery or deploy process for software projects. Besides the general proposal, we have specific definitions for automated testing. It means there are several source code changes that can be automatically tested, so the scientific experts do not have to be involved. And for those cases in which automated testing fails, we are using and we are providing some testing aids that the specific experts could use for analyzing and defining the success or failure of the source code change. The automated testing is one of the most interesting contributions of the proposal. This automatic testing includes a static verification, and when the static verification fails, it runs experiments so that a dynamic testing is made. The static verification is basic assembly file comparison, and this is possible because the compiler is able to generate assembly files from the source code. And for every source code that has been changed, usually only one, but maybe more, the compiler is required to generate the assembly file, and the assembly file of the new version is compared to every assembly file of the previous version. If all the comparisons are successful, then the static verification is also successful, where successful means every assembly file is identical to the previous version 1. If some comparison fails, then the dynamic verification is needed. This example is one of the changes that the static verification is successful. Why? Well, because it's only syntactic. It means it only changes the source code, in this case adding spaces. Other changes that are also successful are those that include comments or delete the comments that are not needed anymore. When the static verification or the static testing fails, it is still possible to make an automatic testing, and in this case we have to run the new program version. And after running the new program version, we have to compare each output file. Sometimes they are 5, 10, or even hundreds of output files, and the output files generated with the new version are compared with those of the previous version. If some of those comparison fails, then the dynamic verification fails, and we have to run testing aids. If in the other case every comparison is fine, it means every output file of the new version is the same, contains the same data that those of the previous version, then the successful dynamic verification is completed. This is one of the examples in which the assembly code is different from one version to the new version, but the semantics of the new version is exactly the same, so the new version will produce the same results, exactly the same results. When the automated experiments fail, every automatic experiment fails, we are still able to go further with verifications and testing aids. In one case, by taking advantage of experts' knowledge and on numerical differences, and if it is not possible, then with direct intervention of experts in possibly in an interactive way. If the expert scientific users are able to provide information about output files and acceptable numerical differences of those output files, then each output file of the new version can be compared to the output files of the previous version. So if some difference is greater than the difference provided by experts, then the expert has to be warned and further experiments or further analysis is needed. If there is no case in which the difference is greater than that provided by the experts, then the verification is successful. So the experts are needed, but the verification is almost automatic. When the previous testing fails, then the experts are required to get more involved in the differences analysis. And all we can do and our tools can do is provide information about differences that are greater than those provided or required by the expert and the applications, of course. So on those differences, several information can be provided depending on the expert's requirements. And the information provided by the tools are expected to aid in further development and updates of the source code, or even they may produce that the change is discarded because it introduces some problem or some bug or some miscalculation of the application. So we have presented and we have explained some general proposal for changing and updating and handling a project or legacy source project, mostly collecting experience from our previous research work. So we are using this approach on actual legacy code, and in many cases we have successfully applied the proposal and the legacy source code has been updated. We have much more work to do. Of course, we have used this approach on a limited number or a small number of applications, and we expect to use it on more applications, more legacy code to see if something is missing. And we have not yet used this approach in performance analysis. Many source code changes are expected to be applied for optimization and parallelization source code, so we have to use it in this case too.